Phone's like the last one, just a little bit better. So I no longer am the one to ask when you want all the updates on the latest cell phones. But things like solar are really, really interesting now. They're changing a lot. They're one of those technologies that if you look at it 10 years from today, it'll be very, very different than it was 10 years ago. So they're kind of a fun thing to look into. So I've really enjoyed being able to kind of look into them. So as I kind of learned about them kind of for fun, I think they would be a good idea for the city, and I'll explain why I think they're a good fit for us. They're certainly not a good fit for every situation, but I think they will be here. Now, what I want to kind of start out to make sure is you'll notice in your packet that you have 4 different bids, and I'll kind of explain those to you. So probably only one of those is like a final, this is the last one we're going to do. So one of the companies, I think it was King Solar, came out to City Hall, got on the roof, marked out with chalk, yada, 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 looked at all of our stuff, went to the Bel Aire Rec Center, whatnot. So that price and whatnot's probably going to be the final one. Some of those other ones, the company, like the guy from Lawrence, he was like, well, if the city council isn't even interested in doing them, I'll give you a price based on sort of satellite images, but I don't really want to drive down to Bel Aire and, kind of give my best final bid until we're sure that the city council is absolutely interested in them. But I thought giving you all 4 the bids and kind of demonstrating how pretty close they are, actually. There's only one that's quite a bit different in the way it was done is kind of helpful in helping you understand where they are. So what we want to decide here today, what I'm hoping is we're not discussing which of these 4 bids to take, right? So these 4 bids aren't 4 final bids from these companies, right? So we're discussing whether we are interested in hearing, the best bids we can possibly get and then possibly voting on them. Does that make sense? We don't have to choose between these 4 tonight, okay? Absolutely, we can't, right? And I know that you guys know that. I just didn't want to get distracted comparing the bids. I think that could be a real distraction for us. I just want to kind of keep the focus more broad. This is my favorite picture of solar panels I've ever seen. This is what happens when you get the pastor guy to do presentation on solar panels. So this is just a church in Iowa my sister took a picture of. But when is solar worth buying? The number one reason why someone might be think solar panels worth buying is when it makes money. Okay, so is solar panel going to make you money? What helps you make money in the solar panel world? You need long-term ownership. Clearly, owning the solar panel over a long period of time is super key. You're not going to make money on the cost of that solar panel in the first year as far as making your money back that you're going to put into it. So long-term ownership is really key. And of course, this is one of the biggest advantages we have as a city. So how long am I going to own my house? Not as long as the city of Bel Aire is going to own City Hall, right? I mean, the city of Bel Aire is going to own City Hall for like ever. Another advantage of it is low interest rates. And the reason low interest rates are super valuable is because if you're the amount of money that you're saving in monthly bills is really close to the amount of money your monthly payment would be. Clearly, low interest, you're just borrowing the money, and then having really, really low interest rates is a big advantage. And of course, we're in a really low interest rate climate right now. So I think this is a good opportunity to think about it. And of course, as a city, we have an even bigger advantage over someone doing it for their house or whatever, because we get super low interest rates to be able to borrow. So that's a big advantage we have. Another thing you need is an adequate location. Not every building in the world is, you can't. If you don't have any south facing at the correct angle, whatever, it doesn't work. If you don't want to put them in a field or don't have the land, we have an adequate location. You'll notice of the 4 different bids you got, 3 of them have them on the roof. The 4th one, I tried to tell the guy we didn't want to put him in the field. We didn't want to put him in the field because we didn't know it was going to be in that field in 30 years. And he just wouldn't listen to me. So that's what he did. Okay. But I think we have an adequate location on the roof. And that's good, I think, because Ty and I talked about it. In a really long term, we just don't know what this empty ground around us is going to be, and we can't predict that. So we just wanted to be able to avoid that. Another reason that helps make money is tax incentives. Now, we are the taxers, so we don't get those tax incentives for us. But for a business or a private person, this is could be a really big deal on the tax incentives. When is solar worth buying? Reason number 2 is when you want to be independent of the grid. So the people that are really into solar panels are kind of an interesting group. Obviously, you have the people that want to lower carbon emissions, but there are actually a lot of the people that if you get into this that really like solar panels are like, we don't like the government. We don't want to be connected to the grid. We don't want to depend on oil and all the regulation and all the big companies and all the big government that's involved in fossil fuels or other forms of energy. So being independent of the grid. Now, being independent of the grid, of course, requires a battery, which means you're not going to actually ever save any, you're not going to save money, right? The cost of the battery is going to be more than the money savings. But a lot of people that enjoy independent from government regulation, independent from complicated supply lines, or independence, resilience against weather. So example, for when Texas had its freeze, there were some people that owned a battery and solar panels and they never lost power, right? They just, their battery kept them going throughout the whole thing. I think they had to clean off their solar panels from the snow or whatever, but other than that, they were able to have resilience from the weather, which is why if you're going to open a shack up in the mountains of Kentucky or whatever, solar panels with batteries is a good idea. We don't get this benefit, right? We're not going to be independent from ourselves. Another reason why is you would want to reduce CO2 emissions. Many people may not care about this. A few in our constituency may. I've never had anybody of our constituency say they care about this, so I'm not aware that this is a priority for us. When is solar not worth it? In my opinion, this is when solar is not worth it. When the finances don't make sense to how much you care about the other two. So I think we don't care about number 2 at all. I don't think we really, it seems like that I'm aware of, we care about number 3. So to me, the question is, does number 1 work for us? Does it make us money? And I think it does. I think it will make us money. So we're a long-term organization. We get super good interest rates. We could put them on the roof. We have a good roof for it too, as far as visibility. It shouldn't, I don't know, Ty and I walked around, you can look out there and imagine what it would look like, but it shouldn't be an incredibly visible thing. Our long-term outlook at low interest rates make it so we don't need the tax breaks. So the disadvantage that we don't get the tax breaks, because we're so long-term, we can easily overcome that. If you would get solar panels on, you're going to build a new house, they might, with the tax breaks, you might be able to pay them off in like 8 years or something like that. It'll be longer for us. If we get 3 of the estimates, the ones that are all on the roof, they say that we're in the black after about 16 years with very little out of pocket. So in about 16 years, we'll have paid off the loan that we take out, will be equal. And every year after that, we'll make money after year 16. So how long are they going to last? Solar panels are warranted for 25 years, but they should continue running at 70% after 40 years. So in year 40, your solar panel should be running at 70%. Are you going to get as much money as, are you going to savings as you get year 1? No, but it's just free money after that. So like, if you look at the very first Barrett Solar, I think they actually gave the different options if you took out a loan. So the other three only have the cash option, but that one actually gives what it would cost in the bond. You can see. So for example, if we took out a 20-year bond at 2%, we would never go negative ever. Like the amount we saved in monthly bill would be the amount, would be more than the amount we had to pay for the monthly payment on the solar. If we got a 15-year, we would have to pay a little bit out of pocket, maybe $3,000 the first year, $2,000, then it goes lower and lower as we go. So some FAQs I thought might come up. I mentioned the 25-year warranty. When I talk about solar panels, people ask me about hail. The only headache with hail is if hail comes and completely ruins your roof, your solar panels will be completely fine. You just have to move them, replace your roof, and then put the solar panels back. That's the only headache that could possibly be there. If you've gone to Iowa, or like when I was in Greece, they have solar panels everywhere. I mean, if solar panels broke with hail, those places wouldn't have them. As far as insurance would go up some. My wife works in insurance. I talked to another guy that does insurance. He's like, the amount you already pay on your building insurance, the amount that your insurance would go up because of this amount of money. He's like, it would be some, but it's not very much at all. So it doesn't seem like that'd be a big deal. But if we want to know the exact number, we're interested in doing it, I would certainly suggest that the city ask our insurance company what that number actually would be, just in case it's a lot more than I think it's going to be. But I figured I wouldn't ask staff to run down that number if we weren't interested in doing it all. Another factor is rising power costs. If you looked over each of those carefully, each company says a different thing. Like some are like, oh, it'll go up to, your power increase will be 2% a year, or it'll be 3.5% a year. Obviously, what that number is really matters. So if you say 4%, if one company says 4, one says 2, we would need to factor all that in. I mean, it's pretty much guaranteed it's not going to go down or stay the same. So it's probably our power costs are going to go up. It's just a matter of predicting who would go up. So I would probably, if we were interested in doing it, I would have Ted or whoever Ty thought would be appropriate look in how much they've gone up over the last 16 years and see what we think that percentage would be. But all these predictions include the rising costs of power. Other municipalities have done this. So one of the companies did put them on in North Newton. One of them put on the City Hall in North Newton. One of them put them on the City Hall in Lawrence. I don't know if I have this as a separate point. Maybe I do, but I think it's kind of important to say this feels kind of like a new technology because we live in Kansas, but it is not a very new technology at all. This is like this technology has been around a long, long time. The first solar panel was built, was invented in the 1890s. They got 1% of production out of it. Now we get somewhere between 12 and 20% of capture, and they've just been improved more and more and more and more. So lots of places all around the world doing it. I know the mayor went to something, I'm not sure where it was. I think a guy was trying to acquire land to put in a big solar bank. I don't know if that's going to work out financially for him, but it's this kind of thing's been going, solar's really been going a long time. If any of you are wondering about solar shingles, they're totally awesome. They're totally cool. If I was going to buy a new house and I was going to have to put a brand new roof on, I absolutely would consider the solar shingles. But if you talk about ripping your whole perfectly good roof off and then putting a solar shingle roof on, financially that just doesn't make any money. Property value, it does make your property value go up. In Kansas, people aren't as used to having solar panels on roofs, so I think we're having a hard time calibrating what it's worth. But like if you go to buy a house, you look on Zillow, it'll say what the monthly bill is for your power usage. And so if you could, it does make your property value go up. In other parts of the country, best of my understanding is people really take that into account. If you have solar panels, because your monthly payment on your power will be lower, it'll probably continue to happen as more and more people get it. The way the metering works is called net metering, and I'll explain that if that's kind of a new term. They do net metering by billing cycle. So it works like this. You produce a lot of power in the afternoon on the first day of the billing cycle, too much, let's say, more than you use in that afternoon. You send it to the power company, and they keep track of that. Then at night, when your solar panels aren't using it at all, they give it back to you, whatever you produced extra. And they'll keep track of how much you've given them compared to how much they've given back per billing cycle. And at the end of the billing cycle, they start over. Now, some states, they start over every year. So they keep track all year and let you keep track. And if that were true, for our state, we would put more solar panels on our roof than what these guys are proposing. This is based on net metering on billing cycle. So that's kind of how net metering works. So yes, of course, you produce way more power in the day, but you get to keep all that power, at least for the billing cycle. But unfortunately, you can't, all the extra power you make in some month that you don't use very much heat and air conditioning, you don't get to use in July or whatever when you have your air conditioning on the time. Ground mounts, I've already tipped my hand on that. I think they're a fine thing, but I don't think they make any sense for us. We just don't know what we're going to do with our empty ground. So I don't think we should consider those. Lifespan, I mentioned that before, the 25-year warranty, but they'll probably go for 40 years. So I've went and watched a bunch of reviews of people that have had their solar panels a long time, and those are all very good. They last. They slowly degrade. My understanding is the main reason they degrade in their power, at least one guy said, maybe I don't fully understand, is the panels get very, very minor scratches and nicks, and so over time, how much energy they can pull does go down over time. Cleaning, some people ask about that. They don't really need to be cleaned. The rain cleans them off. But maybe once a year, you want to go up there and just clean them off just because it'll rise your efficiency a percent or two. So, but there's no special cleaning, anything. You just go up there and kind of wash them off, and you don't necessarily have to do that, but it would create your efficiency. And I found out that you can get on the roof quite easily through Jackie's office. Really no problem. I figured that out. Insurance, I think I had that on there twice. And then the risk, just to mention, I think especially with the city hall building, the risk is very, very low. I mean, let's just say we don't make money until you're 20. Well, okay. There's just very, very little risk that we are dealing with that will lose money on this project. So what if the percent, higher, the cost of fuel only goes up, the cost of power only goes up 1.5% instead of 2.5% or whatever. I mean, it just means that we don't make money till later. But because we borrow at such a low interest rate and we don't have to have a whole bunch of upfront capital, there's just very, very little risk, I would see, because we don't have to worry about putting up all the upfront capital. Another question some people might be interested in watching. What about City Hall using batteries for backup power? I mean, it's theoretically possible, but a bad idea for us in the sense that we already have a generator that fulfills all of our needs, and they're just price-wise, it just would be totally silly to stop using that generator and go with another option. So we already have that. So I don't think there's really a reason for us to consider that. Maybe in some other generation or some years from now, something like that, some other city can consider, but we just already have the infrastructure and I don't see a need to consider that for us here. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I do have a couple. One of the things you said that these don't get scratched. They might get some minor scratches. So these panels, I assume the film is plastic. Is that correct? Or do you know?
I'm not sure. And so I started at one point looking and Googling and researching like each individual type of panel that each company was selling. And then I said to myself, Joel, if the city council doesn't want to do it, you got to quit looking into this. So I'm not sure. Yeah. So the answer is I don't know. Yeah.
I'd like to know what the plastic is and what its durability is, because I know a lot of plastics get brittle for a period of time and break very easily for a period of time. Not all plastics do that, so you need to know what it is that they're using, so you can have some idea about that durability. You're obviously going to have to do some roof penetrations to do the mounting of these.
Is your mic on?
No, it wasn't. Thank you. I thought it was, but sorry. Thank you for telling me that. So roof penetrations, I was concerned about that because are they guaranteeing the roof penetrations? Because that's a place where leaks happen all the time. That's a big issue in roofing.
So you're wondering how the warranty and their guarantees on fixing anything that might be a problem with that.
Yeah, because that could become an issue for us if they didn't do a proper penetration or did a proper sealing of the penetration. And I've seen some things where some contractors have done some sloppy work. I'm not saying these guys would, but I've seen that sloppy work. So I'm concerned about that. I just don't want to have that issue. And you said the maintenance, there wasn't any maintenance to do other than cleaning, and that's kind of what all the suppliers have told you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that was the other issue.
The one exception might be so it comes when it comes from the sun and the solar panel, it takes it into DC and then converts it to AC, and that converter might need to be replaced after like 15 years. Is the warranty for those are not 25 years; they're shorter. Okay. And so, like, I forget which one, but one of the bids actually calculates that cost into it.
Just converted everything to DC current in here, and
yeah, that's right. Or you could just make everything DC. It's funny. Cars are DC. Car batteries, of course, are DC. So you solar to AC, AC back to DC if you have an electric car.
From AC back to DC before it powers up.
Yeah, yeah.
It all does it. But, okay. So I just was, okay. That's good to know. I'm glad you found that out. So just as I was looking through this, and I didn't read all the detail in it, but I just didn't see the payback being great. It's okay. And if we want to do it, I would be opposed to it, but I just don't see this as a fantastic payback. But if it's something that people want to do.
The reason I think it's such a good idea is because the upfront costs and what we actually have to pay, the payback is whatever we get's like free. I mean, if we were actually writing a check and taking out of our budget $150,000, I'd say, there's probably another way to spend $150,000 maybe to do it. That's why I was thinking it was a good idea.
I understand that. It's just, it's 15 years, and that's just a long period for payback. That's why
I totally agree. And because the savings helps make the payment that we're doing over those 15 years, I see it as valuable. I'd be open to other ways of saving money that could be better than this one. There might be some. I'm open to it.
I'm just saying, from a financial perspective, from what I'm seeing, I don't think that's a great selling point. It's an okay point. It's not negative. It's just not real positive.
It's true.
Okay?
But I mean, we're probably going to argue about whether we're going to give $10,000 to the chamber here. And this is going to save us a whole lot more than $10,000 over the next 30 years.
Yeah. So that's just my 2 cents worth. So anyway, anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I had a couple questions. Well, so one, I guess my general thought on it is, I think if, staff crunches the numbers and the numbers show that there's a positive return here, then I'm certainly open to it. I think your analysis is spot on. That'd be the reason that we would do this, is for the potential financial benefit there. And so I do like that. One question that I have is, on our current roof, what is the status of our current roof? Is it the original roof for the building? Is it due for replacement? Is it recently replaced? Because I can imagine that it isn't probably cheap to pull all these off to then replace a roof to then put them all back on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we got a new roof. I think it was within the last 5 years. Remember that hailstorm came through? Was it around 5-6 years ago?
One in 2017. I know that.
Okay.
'Cause I had a lot of damage from that one.
2013 is when it was. Okay.
Was it
So yeah,
13?
we've had
Oh, okay.
we've had it replaced in 2013.
I actually am. Oh, sorry.
Is it like a 30-year roof? We expect it,
That
or did
I
we do a
don't
50-year roof
know.
or 15-year roof? Because
Well, my guess is at least a 30, but I don't know if we did a 15.
okay,
We could look at that.
I'm just curious. How close is it to being needed to be replaced anyway? Because
And another question
assessing that would be-
have, is what's the cost of taking them off and on? And if the hail comes and the insurance company replaces the roof, let's say, I just want to make sure, we would want to make sure we calculate the cost. If the insurance may also pay for the taking off and putting on. I don't know the answer to that question, but it seems like we would want to know the answer to that.
I think that's a good question to ask the insurance companies
Yes.
as well.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was thinking about, I think it's great that the warranty covers longer than the payback period. I think that's definitely a requirement. My concern is how that warranty is structured and who's the
Mhm.
guarantor of the
Mhm.
warranty. And, to what degree can we have confidence, if it's the business guaranteeing that warranty, that they will still be in business in 25 years? I would see that as a big risk to the bet
Mhm.
around, hey, we accidentally select the provider of solar panels that makes not the amazing ones.
Mhm.
We have them installed for 7 years, and then lo and behold, because their solar panels aren't amazing, they go out of business, and we're stuck with a bill for not amazing solar panels,
Mhm.
and no recourse to fall back on there.
So King Solar, I think, if I'm getting my companies right, like Keith remembers the guy that was up here's dad, who also installed them. So some of these companies have a pretty long track record, and we would want to vet all that history on what they've been doing and so on and so forth.
And there's
'Cause
probably no amount of vetting that can 100% guarantee that type of thing. It's probably a risk that we'll just have to put a value on and understand how that factors into this decision.
And I'm not an expert warranty person, so I'm hoping if this is something we're interested in, this is something maybe staff will help me with as far as vetting the warranties. And really, we haven't had Keith spend a minute on this necessarily, and I didn't want to have him spend a whole bunch of time thinking about this until I knew that council was interested in doing it. So he would certainly need to look at this and has at least some experience. I don't know if I haven't talked to Keith about it, so I don't know if you've had much conversation with him either about it. But
So if most warranties I've seen are workmanship and material workmanship, which obviously that goes away pretty quick, because the workmanship or for materials are going to show up fairly quick. If you look at your bathtub curve life cycles and that kind of stuff, durability I'd be interested in, and it'd be interesting to know what their life cycles have been in other installations, similar installations.
Mhm.
that they could tell us. You know,
Mhm.
that would be interesting to know.
I would add one that we see commonly on city hall structures. It's just them coming out and servicing and maintaining the product. So typically when they come out and service and maintain and no one else touches it, our warranties are good to go for when we have to have something replaced early. So I don't know if they cover that, but that's been common in some of our other contracts.
If I may, if I think Jackie touched part of my part. Of course, every time we have a February freeze like we did, staff sits down and say, what did we do wrong? What did we do right? And we've already mentioned Keith a lot. Keith knows every bolt in this building. Nobody else does. So what we learned from that February freeze is Keith needs to transfer some of his knowledge. I've been working with him a lot. One with generator stuff. You wouldn't believe how many times a fire alarm goes off that nobody knows, that it's silent, sends you an email saying something's wrong. You need to call this place. Sprinkler system in the system. There's malfunctions everywhere. So like Jackie, I would like to see if we do go forward, priority is to you guys, but as far as the admin side, to make sure that the company who puts it in is able to maintain it, because I don't know who's going to be here in 20 years if they're even going to appropriately maintain a system like this. And then on top of the generator and everything else that you're maintaining in a system, how are we going to approach that? So that's my only caveat. I have no judgment on the decision to put them up there. I just have the responsibility of maintaining, and I want you guys to understand that point as well. So
I'm sure you haven't had a time to look at all the proposals, because there's quite a bit here, and I didn't get through it all either. But if we did move forward, I think the most important thing to me would be vetting the finance side of this and the economics. And somebody that's trying to sell us a product is, of course, going to present things. They may be inclined to present things in the most favorable way possible to selling the product, and so we may have a different point of view on how some of these things are calculated. And so that would be the first thing. The first step in my book would be to really dig in on the finance side and see if there's an economic case here.
But I almost did this, but I just decided I had to when to stop working. But I really think we need to call the cities, especially in our area, that had these companies install it. I mean, we have cities that have had these companies install these things, and if they've had them for even just a couple years, we could be like, are all the things they said that were going to happen, are they happening? I mean, they obviously can't give you a 40-year or 30-year projection, but there is some track record of some other people doing the exact same thing that we'll be able to look at. And I would absolutely say we need to make those calls before we go forward.
You're absolutely right. You need to do that. All right.
I guess if I were to weigh in, I guess I'm somewhat neutral on this topic. I'm not incredibly big champion of solar panels, but I'm also not against them. Certainly, if they actually work and make money, to me, this is all about the money. And in terms of return on investment, when I saw the 16 years for revenue neutral status, or however you want to call that, that did strike me as a long time. I thought 16 years is a pretty long time. But you did mention residentials was closer to 8, on average. So I guess I'd be more excited if that were a shorter period of time. This is fascinating information. I really appreciate you putting this stuff together and gathering this. This is interesting. I certainly haven't researched this on my own very much. But I guess like Councilman Smith said, I'd like to see even more analysis financial wise. I don't know. What was your thought in terms of how soon we would take these bids seriously or something like that? What were you thinking?
Well, I think Ty wanted, if we were going to do it, Ty, you talked to me about what you thought would be the best timeline if council decided to go forward. So you probably got those dates better than me.
So our thought was we're potentially considering a bond issue in the next 3 months. And so the we'll be talking about that next. And then Ted actually included a $3 million note. So basically what we did is add 150,000 to what you were looking at for streets to bring it up to 3 million. So we would probably have the money in 3 to 4 months. And so if you were interested in moving forward, we would need to know that to size that bond in the next month or two. And we would have to get on actually getting the bids and stuff to you within the next month. So probably 3-4 months.
Just curious, in your research, did you happen to look at like the trend line of cost on solar panels?
Solar panels are currently like a computer used to be. Like when you bought a new computer a year later, it was out of date. But if you never bought one, then you never got to use it. So that's kind of how they are. So I watched a guy who had put one on his farm. It was a video of him putting on his farm. And when he put it on, it was a 25-year payoff is when he put it on. That's how long out it was. And it was like 12 years ago. So they've gone way better. I read a book or listened to a class from 2016 that was like, I forget the unit of measurement. It was like per foot 1 watt. That's totally wrong. But one was the number unit of measurement. And then he did continue to teach the class. He was teaching about all different kinds of power, coal and biofuel and everything. And he was like, but let's just do the math with 2, because this technology is really moving fast. I'm like, that is ridiculous. 2? I mean, like you doubled its production just like out of thin air. Well, the class was taught in 2016. I listened to the class in like 2019, and guess what? I looked it up. It was like already at 1.5. I mean, they had a 50% increase in like 3 years. So yes, this will be better to do this. The payoff will be sooner, but it's just like, but you have to have them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was more interested in the cost side of it than the production side of it. So, what I was wondering is, if one panel today costs $100, do we think that panel next year is still going to cost $100, or are we seeing a trend line of cost where it's exponentially declining? And no, it's going to be $70 if we wait a year.
Yeah, cost is going down. I don't know if I cannot easily predict when the sweet spot is to buy, right? Because it's going to go down. Then at some point it's going to, the amount of technological jump is really going to freeze. I mean, no one knows of a way that we're ever going to possibly get past 30%. It's cost, I guess you're talking about. So the economies of scale, it's hard. I just can't predict the future. And if I knew, I would play the stock market. I guess is kind of what I'm saying. I'm not sure when. But there is probably the sweetest spot of when they're the cheapest. I totally agree with that.
We can't predict the future, but I was wondering, like 2018 versus 2019, the recent history maybe tells us a little bit about what costs are doing. And
I think it's worth even actually I'm sure it wouldn't take much time for me or whoever to just find those numbers, right? How much did they cost 3 years ago to how much do they cost now?
If we're just seeing, year over year rapid decline in price, well, that may give us a market signal that we know we're not at the bottom yet and we should wait a little bit. Or no, maybe we have hit the bottom and it's a good time to really dig deeper here. I don't know. Just a thought. Absolutely.
Like lithium batteries have dropped 90% in like the past 20 years. I mean, it's crazy in price. So I don't know. I think that's worth looking up. But I don't think it's on that kind of trajectory right now, but it could be.
Yeah, I just haven't looked into that at all. So I was just curious if you'd run into that.
Do you know where these are built, these panels?
I did not look into where each company built. I started really looking into the panels and researching the different kinds and, longevity versus, so they get anywhere from 12 to 20. Are we buying the 20 and do the 20 last as long? And the color matters, right? So like a little bit more blue is better because they don't get as hot. So black costs a little bit more because they have to have more stuff in there to keep them cool, because actually solar panels, if they get too hot, start losing efficiency. So that's why they tend to be a little bit more bluer, because they actually don't want to get too hot. So anyway, I started getting kind of in those weeds and I realized I did not look into that, but that's a worthwhile question.
It wouldn't necessarily make or break the decision. It would just maybe be a decision.
Yep.
One of many factors, right? So any more questions or discussion about the solar panels?
I don't have anything further. I think it's a really creative idea and something worth looking into. I'm maybe a little concerned on the timeline being more aggressive than what we can reasonably expect to execute on. I'm not sure how practical it would be for us to get these folks lined up to come talk to us and really do that thorough financial assessment and alternative analysis in the period of time that we're talking about for this bond that we've already kind of started the ball rolling on. That's maybe the biggest concern I have of all the concerns.
So I think if you're comfortable, adding 150,000, we could certainly do that. Have a $3 million bond, and if after we got the funds, if you felt that this just isn't going to work, then we could use the 150 for street work, which is basically what we're borrowing the money for. So again, that's just a thought. If you were interested in saying, let's get this done, if it makes sense, we could have the money ready. And I think worst case, the way Kevin explained it, is that, the day of the bond, we could always say, well, instead of 3 million, we're going to do 2.8 or something. I'm sure he wouldn't like that. But that's something we can do. I see this as, and I talk a lot about policy. You all are the policymakers, and I see this as a decision that, does it save us money? And it sure looks like it does. I see it as the other side of it is that, do you as a governing body feel that, this renewable energy and things is important? And, if it is, do we want to be a leader in that and, put them on City Hall? That kind of makes a statement that the city believes in that. Certainly, I think it's the key is that the money savings is there. And, that's one of our major concerns is, we would obviously be more verbal if it lost money and you wanted to make a policy statement, but yet we lost money. I think we have some concerns about that. But
to be clear, the policy statement that I want to make is that we spend less of my personal tax dollars, and all of our taxpayers, right? The policy statement that I'm interested in is one of spending less money.
Yep.
I guess in that context, I can't help but jump on my soapbox that I have here and just declare that if our country got on board with building more fourth generation nuclear power plants, this would be just a fun hobby project. We shouldn't be in a position where we have to be considering these things. I think renewable energy, first of all, is a oxymoron, and it's not renewable energy. It is capturing more energy. It's getting, it's an interesting solution to potentially lowering costs, and I recognize that. But again, that would be my motivation. With our country moving towards electric vehicles and a lot of other things, aircraft and all that, that electricity is going to have to be generated. I don't see solar energy as being the future. I mean, like Councilman Schroeder pointed out, it has been here a long time. This is not some Star Trek technology that we have yet. Hopefully battery technology gets improved, because that's the big limitation on our grid, as well as, residential or buildings or whatever. But yeah, I'm not super excited, but I'm open to this. And, I think Councilman Schroeder's presentation was pretty awesome at getting me on board with this. I think, if the finances work out, I wouldn't oppose it. But I can't help but seeing a presentation on solar panels, just think in the greater context, there's better solutions out there. Nuclear power is the miracle, creator of electricity. And if you disagree with me or don't know, we can, there's some good TED videos on YouTube.
I actually completely agree with you, but thankfully we don't have to solve those problems. We don't have to solve the grid or whatever. I agree with you on nuclear too. I think it's a great idea, but We don't have to solve those problems. I don't have to solve whether they're going to come up with solid state batteries. I don't have to figure out whether they're going to store energy by pumping water up a hill and letting it go back down, or putting weights up in the air to let them drop back down, or all the ways they're talking about doing it. It's all very, very fun and interesting, and solving grid issues and connecting different parts of the country. I find all that really fun and interesting. But for Bel Aire, to me, it's just, this is a way for us that doesn't take upfront costs and it saves us money. I think we should do it.
I guess the final comment, I maybe have one more comment. I think I said I was done, but I thought of another one. To me, this makes a lot more sense for City Hall than the rec center, because in my mind, with the state of the rec center, 20, 25 years from now, we may have a brand new rec center sitting right out here in front of City Hall or something like that. I guess the future of that, we're going to talk about strategic planning, is less certain in my mind. So I guess I'm more interested in it for City Hall than for the rec center, just because there's a lot of options that future councils will even have on what to do there, and where should the rec center be, how big should that building be, should we tear it down and build a brand new bigger one in the same spot or somewhere else. I think all of those will be topics probably within that 25-year period, and so I guess I'm less comfortable signing up for that bet.
And I really tend to agree with you. I mean, I think we need to be pretty sure this is going to be here at least for 20, 25 years. We really need to, it's going, and I think about the future of the rec center, and I doubt any of us will decide it, but I think you're right that it's pretty unsure. So I tend to agree with you. It's a beautiful roof for solar panels. You could put 1 million of them on there, but I think you're right that it wouldn't work out.
Okay, so I guess the consensus is we're going to continue to pursue this and see if this makes sense for us, and we'll look forward to getting more information.
Great.
Okay?
And yes. And so Ty, I guess you and I can decide how we want to go forward.
So, yeah, I guess and I think based on what the mayor's saying, if these numbers are correct, then you would feel comfortable accepting a bid. But if so that
Which
would tell
numbers?
me, well,
I've
that
got 4 sets of numbers.
The 16-year-ish payoff.
I'm
So-
not comfortable committing to any numbers. I want to see real numbers.
okay.
I guess
So
is my
I guess my question is, though, they're looking at about 15-year payoff. We'd borrow for 20. And the issue is that obviously there's a lot of work that we're going to have to put into getting bids. And my concern is, if you think that 15-year payoff is not enough, then should we even put the time in it? Because it may be that it's a 20-year payoff. But if you're comfortable with a 15-year payoff, we can get the bids, and if it comes in better, great. But
if we expect to pay less in utilities than what we're paying for the solar panels, and at the end of it, we have the solar panels for free, basically, then I'm fine with that level of return, I think.
Okay.
I would like some upside.
Okay.
But
all right.
I like that.
more upside is better.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
let me clarify what my thinking process was, because I don't think I was really clear about it. I'm okay with this, and I'm okay with the 15-year payback. But I just remember a CEO saying one time, if he believed all the estimates that he was given on all the packages that are put in front of him for capital investments, he said we wouldn't have to make any sales. We make all of our money on our capital investments, which is really silly. You're not ever going to do that. So I'm not saying that these guys are playing high in the sky numbers with us, but just 15 years is I don't know where I'm going to be in 15 years. If somebody told me 15 years ago I was going to be mayor of Bel Aire, I would say, really, what planet are you from? Because I would never thought of that. Okay, so I'm just saying that's a long time. It's a short time too, but it is a long time as looking in the future.
For
We
houses,
don't
the
know
payoff's
where-
much quicker.
We don't know where energy is going to go. You're never going to replace oil. There's too many uses for oil. We use computers and cell phones, and we have all kinds of
Plastics.
things we use in life that are made from oil. So, if you think you're going to get away from oil, I think you don't live in America. Okay. So we're not going to get rid of it. it's perfectly fine to have other sources of energy. I think that's great. I think windmills are great. I think solar panels are great. But he's right. They have been around for a while. I remember, 20, 30 years ago, we'd talk about solar panels and they were going to use them to heat water and use that process, which I guess that conversion factor wasn't good enough there because nobody ever did that. But let's talk about that.
They do it on a really small scale in Greece. Like that's how they
Do they?
heat their water for their showers. They have things on top of their roofs with their water there, and they have solar panels, and that's how they heat their water for I mean, not what you're talking
That's
about.
very
But
common in Mexico too.
Yeah.
But not for solar panels. That's just their tank.
yeah, yeah.
So, but yeah, okay. Anyway, so if it's something we want to do, it's fine. Okay. I'm not wild by the numbers, but I'm okay with it. Okay. All right. Good. All right. Ready to go on to ARPA funds?
So I guess last we met, I just kind of took the high bullet points, page 95 of your packet. Literally just said our goal is to utilize funds to provide the most lasting impact to the most people. Healthy family, businesses, and school need reliable and affordable water and sewer services to live, operate, and continue to thrive. I think a vast majority, if not all, of our ARP money is going to be spent on infrastructure improvements through water and sewer. If you remember, we did PC came in and did a rate study. We also tacked on a CIP for our water and sewer systems. That's page 96 and 97. So there's more than enough sewer lining projects and water main replacement projects to get this money. The one thing staff is a little bit pushback on is we'd like the opportunity to sell or remain this updated software system for our payroll, accounting, point of sale, and utility billing. We don't have to make that decision today. Just in the next 4 years, I'm estimating about $250,000 to implement the new system for all those services. We talk about saving time and staff. A lot of the newer generation ones provide paperless time sheets and payroll reporting, provide business continuity through a disaster, any disaster, it's all in the cloud. Increase efficiency and productivity of current staff, provide easy to use platform and flexible features for residents and better reporting. Again, these are just a few high bullet points. We can get down the weeds, but that's one thing that Ty and I both met after last time we met and said we really need to push on maybe keeping the door open on this particular project because it's really going to serve us for a long time, the next 20 years at least of Bel Aire residents. And this is something that everyday budgets usually can't absorb. Also, no one wants to pay for, I use the analogy, a new furnace with their everyday spending. So this is kind of a gift. If not, I know my kids are going to be paying for this gift, but we would also like to just keep that in the forefront of your guys' mind. We understand that infrastructure is the main priority of this funds.
We've talked for 10 years about needing new software. And it's just hard when you bring that to, a budget of $250,000 for something you don't even see. We know the need for it, but we know for you all, it's difficult to, on a typical budget, it's at least you spend $250 on a vac truck, you see that out working and things like that. But this software is something that we really need, and we feel like this is a great opportunity to use some of those funds to get that so that we don't have to budget for it at a future time. That's the only concern that we have. And, we're fine with adding the rest of it all in sewer and water repairs. That makes sense, but we just would really like you to consider that.
So I think I probably asked this question before. Does this software require additional equipment, servers, or any other peripheral equipment?
No, none of it would be housed in City Hall, so it would actually free up server space. Now, continuing, it might I shouldn't talk out of turn. There might be some need for a server, but I don't see any more. From what I've heard, I haven't gone out for official bids of just what others communities are doing. The only thing I see is we currently pay an annual fee, licensing fee, so that might increase a little bit. But other than that, I don't see any extended needs.
Have you looked at, and I know you're on the software committee, maybe you had that up. I don't know if I'm using the right term or not.
Sure.
But have you looked at how this integrates with everything else that we're doing?
Yeah, we haven't chosen a company yet. The only upgraded software we have is iWorks, and they're primarily focused on planning and zoning issues. Now they do serve some modules on this, but what I'm thinking is specifically set for utility billing, accounting, the main drivers of the city, as well as payroll, which all integrate with each other. It's a point of sale system.
My guess is that there's probably a number of different alternatives to consider here from a software perspective, and sounds like we haven't done any alternative assessment yet, but maybe you're thinking, hey, 250,000 is maybe a number to set aside that would maybe cover us. It might be less than that. It might be more than that. My guess is that as you look at some of those alternatives, you'll see some where you can pay a big price up front and you get the software and then you don't pay for it every year. Other models will be more subscription based, and there will be alternatives to consider there as well. I am 100% behind doing a deeper dive here, and would be happy to participate in that to any extent that I can. But I'm betting we would need to do that before we would have better details on what that would really cost and whether or not there would be infrastructure that would have to be purchased there. Is that fair?
100%. That's kind of where I was going after. Ty asked me to write an update based on our last conversation, and really, one, we're not starting till 2022, and we have 4 years to spend this money. I just don't want that particular project to die on a simple conversation. So I'll and where I got that money is a like municipality that explored the options, and that's what was quoted to them for their favorite option. That died in a city council meeting. So I just was that's where I threw out that number is okay, that makes sense, and that was recent. So it might be more, it might be less, but I imagine that's pretty close for. Surprisingly enough, they charge by population, some of these companies, which is interesting. So we'll see.
I assume a benefit of this is the longer we wait, the harder this gets, in the sense that I know at some point Wichita changed their point of sale and it was horrible. They have been around a long time, and switching that over. Would you see a benefit doing it sooner, as like the reintegrating new software and changing it over will get harder if our city is twice the size, or are we in a situation where transferring it will not be a big deal as time goes on?
Right now I have 5 employees. It's easier to train 5 employees than 10. Not that we're going to grow by 10 in 20 years, but you know what I'm saying is I have a smaller staff. I would say now would be a way better time to integrate than in 10 years, or I don't know how you're.
Maybe I'm not quite understanding. Did you use the word point of sale? Mm-hmm. Does that mean like this is the software that everyone makes a payment to Bel Aire is going to go through this software? Mm-hmm. So when like the city of Wichita, like the amount of places they take money from was just like insanely big. So we take money at the rec center, mm-hmm. surely, right? We take money at the pool, I guess. And so I assume the older we get, the more point of sale hits. Yeah, maybe it's not a big deal. I'm
point of sale is just it really just you enter your check through the computer and it hits utility billing, it hits my GL, and it hits our bank at the same time. So it's really not a crazy technical process, at least the point of sale side of things. The big thing I would say on that, and we can go forward, is it'll integrate online payments with in-house payments. Right now, we are part of the closeout process is we pull those from online and we enter them in our system. So this would be fully integrated.
So, yeah, I think one thing that would be helpful to probably understand is well, we need to do a lot probably of deeper dive work here. I know that you know that, but looking at what work processes this will impact, both from the city's perspective and from the customer's perspective, I think could probably help articulate to the council and the public how a solution like this will create value and be worth, whatever price it ends up costing us.
100%.
I would say that this is the type of thing I'm super interested in. I think I'm going to be supportive. Obviously, you haven't looked into it enough to know to answer the kind of questions we would have about how supportive I would be. But it does seem like the type of thing that, in general, I would be interested in. I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, and it's if I had to make an analogy, it'd be a lot of our phone system type conversation, right? We went from analog, can't do anything, to so many different components that we can service at any time, which is good.
Mr. Mayor, can we take a 5-minute recess?
Just so the public knows what's going on, Mr. Welch took ill. He is going to go to the hospital at Wesley, and hopefully he will be well soon. So keep him in our prayers. Moving on to, are we done with the discussion on the ARPA funds? Do we
I think
need to
so.
talk about that anymore?
I guess
Okay, very good. Let's move on to the 2022 budget. And if it's okay with council, I think we'll make this the last agenda item for tonight. Okay. Very
so.
good.
If you go to page 98, I'll kind of just go through the three major points we discussed last budget meeting. We decreased the mill levy from 45.73 to 44.5. That was savings or a revenue decrease of $93,913. We added debt service expense for $3 million for a GO bond to issue for construction of 53rd Street, 45th Street design and other. That's about $230,000. We basically moved that from what we would spend on a yearly basis on street improvements, but now it's going into debt service. A little less than that because we found some other savings, but as well as some increases for revenues from the utility funds from franchise fees.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Smith.
on this item number 2 that you're referencing, $3 million is higher than the number I remember us talking about initially. I was thinking it was $2 million for the, or it was $1.5 million for the 53rd Street construction and $500,000 for the 45th Street study, putting us right at $2 million or maybe $100,000 over if that study was the $600,000 number. Am I misremembering that? I'm seeing 3 million here. I'm wondering how we got there.
So what I remember was the 2 million for 53rd Street.
You remember 2 million for 53rd Street?
Yes.
remember that
Well,
as well.
from Oliver to Woodlawn, and then there was about 300,000 to add an additional layer, or I think it was 2 or 3 inches of asphalt
5 inches.
to
5
bring it up to
inches.
5 inches from on 53rd from Rock to Woodlawn, and then about 500,000 for engineering of 45th Street for WAMPO funding. So
Okay.
we were at 2,750.
Okay.
And then the reason we put it up at 3 million was because, as Dr. Schroeder gave his presentation just a few minutes ago, looks like around 150 million. So
150,000.
150,000. Yes, thank you, Mayor.
That's 150 million. You're not doing that.
So that's why we just, leveled it at 3 million, just so that you could see what those payments are. Again, you can approve any sale amount and that
Sure.
will adjust.
I for some reason was thinking 2.5 million in my head, and so I thought it had jumped up. But now that you call out those line items, I had forgotten about one of them. So thank you.
And truthfully, why we discussed, if you look at page 125 and 126, you're looking at, between 3 and 2.75, you're looking at a difference around $20,000, which, is substantial, but according, to our budget, I just went for the worst case scenario kind of thing. We can always scale back if that's the wishes of the council, but if that is the amount, I wanted to make sure and budget for it. The other thing we discussed is maybe not be as gung-ho and maybe doing more of a study for Bel Aire Park and doing some improvements as needed. So we went from $95,000 to $70,000 in expense line for that project. So those are the 3 main areas I touched on, or we discussed, and I adjusted for this second draft of our budget.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Smith.
70,000 is probably more than I'd like to budget for study and make a plan. I was thinking that number should be 25 or so, not maybe even less. if the scope of what we're looking at is study and small repairs. 70 is a lot for a study.
And this is a study options for Bel Aire Park.
Yeah.
So originally, we got some bids a while back on completely redoing the basketball court and then redo the tennis courts with pickleball lines and a new fence, and that was around $95,000. We discussed last budget's meeting that maybe we should study that instead of just go gung ho. Maybe we don't need a new fence. I'm just spitballing. And then we lowered that amount to 70 at the last meeting, just to do a study and then have enough to do some improvements off the study. That was my recollection. But like you said, we're in phase 2, so we can continue discussion on this.
And I may have created some of that confusion because I think I did say 25,000 and maybe you heard lower it by 25,000, but I meant lower it to 25,000. I don't know if that's what I remember, but there was a lot of discussion that happened around that, and
Sure.
others have opinions as well. So
Ted, I think you just clearly explained it to me, and I'm going to need you to do it again. Explain say that just again. You said it just fine, but I didn't quite follow it. You were saying we were going to do that park.
Oh, okay. So Bel Aire Park's probably one of our most popular parks. We said, let's, update the basketball court, refresh. Plus, there's that tennis court right next to it, new court plus fence. That's about $95,000. We said, let's wait. Let's do a little study and lower that amount. And that's where the confusions run. Is it $70,000 or $25,000? And to help judge this along, if you guys switch to page 99, we're really talking about a capital outlay, line 16. If we want to lower that, the difference between 70,000 and 25,000, and then that money would probably go somewhere else. It could go to debt service,
back to streets.
or back to streets. Exactly. That's where, when you guys say something, when we talk about budget, that's where mine goes, is what pocket are we going to put the savings and what pocket are we going to take from? So it's all about priorities.
I would caution, though, just going to 20 or 25. 2 reasons is, one, we know that frontage road's going to go away. And so the park is going to get bigger. So we're probably going to have to, or want to put some shrubs or some things like that in there. So there may be some costs in that. And then the other thing is, which we always talk about, if we hire somebody to do a study, and let's 20,000, let's say, we always want to do something with the study. So it'd be nice to have a little cash to do something like that.
we had a lot of discussion on beautification as part of the Woodlawn project at one point, and I know we saw some presentations on how there were going to be trees and shrubs, and we set a budget for that. Is the stuff that you're talking about in place of where that road is now, is that not included as part of the Woodlawn project?
No. So the trees and shrubs that are talked about are like street trees. So they're along the whole corridor from 45th all the way up to 53rd. I know there was some discussion about doing some things there, but again, we looked at what's the cost of that, and what's the cost of the road, and what are we going to have to borrow, and
Just-
so that
Just to
amount,
clarify, you meant from 37th to 45th.
37th, 45th. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So yeah, that whole corridor was what was getting some street trees and some things like that, but they didn't include anything for the park area.
So where that road is now will just be grass,
Grass.
unless we do something else with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, and that's kind of why, I wanted to see us at least lay out some different options for how that park could be structured, because there is going to be more space. There may be if we're going to put in a brand new basketball court and a brand new tennis court, there may be better locations in that space to put those, and a better way to design it for future growth. And that's why I think it's important to actually plan it out and think about it before we go, spend $95,000 upgrading those two things.
Yeah.
Even if it's on a whiteboard in here, that we consider some options.
Is that adequate to do such a study?
oh yeah, I think 20,000 would cover
Okay.
that,
And
and that's a
then we
great
can-
idea, because we're adding quite a bit. You don't realize that, but it is, and so staff really supports that as getting some design and such.
Okay, let's do that then.
Yeah, and I certainly, as something I harp on, obviously I care about basketball, but in this particular case, the beauty is an important thing. I think we have this new road. I think having the park look really nice is very important. And when if you design a new basketball court, you should call me. I can tell you all the problems with the current one. But I would prioritize, we want it to, look really, really nice.
Okay.
25,000 wouldn't fix your dribble.
No amount of money will fix my game, I don't think.
It's not the court.
Okay. So any more discussion that we need to do on budget? It's ready to go to approval for.
So the next step is what next council meeting next week, I'll present a summary page to you guys, which is the notice of budget hearing, notice of exceeding revenue neutral hearing. It simply says we're going to spend this amount of money and sets a limit to the budget. You guys will set the notice of public hearing, and then we can still meet and do anything we want inside the budget. We just can't exceed that expenditure level that we publish in the newspaper. The first September 7th, when we meet, you'll open the budget hearing for the revenue exceeding the revenue neutral amount. People will come up, talk. You guys will close the hearing. If you wish to proceed, you'll approve a resolution exceeding the revenue neutral rate, and then we'll open the budget hearing. They'll come talk about the budget. I don't know the difference, but they'll come talk about the budget, and then we'll close the budget hearing, and then hopefully we'll approve the budget on September 7th. I will do it once over and send it to the county, and then it'll become our budget for 2022.
Thank you for explaining the process.
Mm-hmm.
And it was changing on us.
Yeah, it's really not as hard as some people seem, but the more difficult is, we get another month or two. Usually, right now we would be finalizing things, so it puts the budget office in a little different situation. Now, next year, if you remember, we didn't send out any notices this year. We're not going to be charged. The Sedgwick County is going to do that starting in 2022. But that will be the little wrinkle there. I think it was smart of them to say, hey, let's try just following this letter of the law first, and then we'll add the layers next year. So it might be a little different next year, but this is pretty much the framework.
Okay. Very good. Mm-hmm. Any other discussion on the budget we need to do? Hearing none, I think we have covered everything. We didn't touch code review. We'll do that at another workshop. And so I guess we'll be adjourned for the evening and see everybody next Tuesday at 7:00. Thank you.